Hey, welcome. Today we're going to talk about your last big presentation in the course, and that is your persuasive presentation. I'm going to apologize in advance for my poor voice and coughing fits. The flu is no joke. But anyway, so a couple tips for you right off the bat about persuasive presentations. Here's the thing that people always do wrong. They do a second informational presentation. And they're like, well, I told you about the thing. And then at the end, I said, now buy this. And that was wrong, and they got bad grades. And so you guys are going to pay attention and do better, and I just know it. Also, it looks like today's presentation is sponsored by UPS. What can Brown do for you? Anyway, so our objectives for the day. We're going to talk about what makes a persuasive presentation unique. Why is it different from the other two that we've done? We're going to talk about the three aspects of rhetoric. We're going to talk about what a call to action is and how to do it well. And we're going to talk about using visuals in a persuasive talk. You tend to use them differently, and we'll go over like what that looks like. I got some great videos for you to show. And then finally, to develop strategies to use during question and answer. So we got some, this is kind of the point at which it makes sense to, you guys are a little more comfortable with all the other things to talk about. All right, like how do we field questions in a professional way? So, all right, I'm not going to have you do the activity. So one of the things that separates persuasive talks from the other two is what we call rhetoric. If you'll remember in your training demonstration, you were teaching people how to do a thing. So they left with a brand new skill, hopefully. In the informational, you were teaching them about a thing. So they left learning more about something. In your persuasive talk, what you're trying to do is to bring them around to your way of thinking. And the way that we do that is through rhetoric. Rhetoric is, most people don't really know what it means. Like they hear it in the context of, politics usually. And it's like, we're tired of all the rhetoric, and his rhetoric doesn't match his record, but most people can't really define it. And so what it is, it's just an ancient Greek word for oratory, so speeches, intended to influence the attitudes or behaviors of others, all right? And it actually comes from the same root word as teacher. Rhetor in Latin means teacher at like a high level. Magistra, I think, is the teacher at like a lower level. There it is, folks. That's the sum total of my 7 years of Latin. It finally came in handy. How about that? Ooh. All right. So when we use it, though, we use it in a couple ways. And so what I'm getting at here is that whenever you're putting together your persuasive talk, like, yes, this is a talk that you'll do. But if you take these things that we're about to teach you about rhetoric and how to bring people around to your way of thinking, there are lots of different ways to apply this. Probably the biggest, but one of the like in classical education, they believe that rhetoric was vital to a democracy. And we look at our country, and you think, gosh, like, what is happening? I really feel like, and this is just me on my soapbox, I really feel that like a lot of it is we've lost the ability to talk to one another in like like when we seek out people who are like ourselves, and we don't have to defend our positions or try to persuade anybody. We just try to get together enough people like ourselves to win. And so, but the belief that, in a democracy, as in any healthy organization, when we say society, I mean, this could be like collegiate FFA, is to be able to articulate your beliefs and try to bring people around to your way of thinking in a way that it's substantive and civil and all that. And so being able to do that is like a thing that's vital to like groups in general, but particularly democracy. It's also a good way to help you clarify your own beliefs, to think through it. Nothing really prepares you for stuff than trying to teach it, in the same way that nothing really prepares you for making, sharpens your own belief system than trying to bring people around to it. Anyhow, so a couple different ways that rhetoric is used in society. So we could say it reaffirms cultural values through rhetorical events. And so what's a rhetorical event? It's funny, that was a rhetorical question that I asked you just then. What's a rhetorical event? I guess no, that's actually not a rhetorical event, because I'm looking for a real answer. Man, I'm on a lot of NyQuil. Anyway, so a rhetorical, you could think of it as like a political rally, right? Like you bring people together and you sort of spout off like whatever it is that you're trying to get them to believe. And chances are if they came to your rally, they believe it. And so it reaffirms their values. It can increase democratic participation, again, like we said earlier, through deliberative rhetoric, right? Theoretically, if you have debates or some kind of town hall style thing, even as, sometimes as cumbersome and as uncivil as they seem, it's still good that they do debates and town halls, because at least the sort of issues get talked about, and we all get brought into the fold to learn a little bit about stuff. And they can also prompt social change through social motivation, so meaning like they can incite social movements. So anyway, hopefully none of you incite a social movement in our class, because that would be interesting. So I had several types of rhetoric on here earlier, and I just deleted them all because the only one that you really need to know about is deliberative rhetoric. And that's the one that we'll be using. And so it usually takes place in the public sphere, right? So it's hard to give, a public address in private. It's typically found in legislative bodies, protests, publications, media. It can be, whenever you break it down at like the micro level, it can be you in your like collegiate FFA chapter or fraternity or sorority trying to convince people to, do this philanthropy over the other philanthropy, or is this really what we believe in? Like, is this the type of organization that we want to be? Like these kinds of arguments, there's a lot of applications for them. So, and then, all right. So whenever we get into like rhetoric, like we think about like what makes a good rhetor, right? So that's you. And we find that according to, really the classics all the way back to Aristotle, they're ethos, pathos, and logos. And we call those the artistic proofs that are the skills that the writer needs to influence effectiveness. And when we come back, we'll talk through what they are.